Hey guys, Magnus Robert here, bringing you a bit of a different video today. So we're still going down a Walking Dead theme, but I wanted to do a family tree for the characters in the series. So this is the Walking Dead family tree. Now, I did do a video on the Simpsons family tree quite a while ago, and it was a very popular video, so I thought, why not do a family tree for one of my other favourite fandoms, which is of course the Walking Dead. Now, originally I was just focusing on the Grimes family, but I ventured off a little bit into some other characters, and I'll show you that in a bit. So, we're going to start, like I said, just with the Grimes family. So, starting off, I would like to bring up Rick Grimes' grandfather. Now, in a season 5 episode, Rick Grimes mentions his grandfather, who was a World War II veteran. Now, it can be assumed that at this point in the story he is deceased, but there is a slight chance that maybe he is alive. Now, of course, Rick Grimes' grandfather told Rick Grimes this speech about, get up, rest in peace now, get up and go to war, which is something Rick Grimes repeats to his group. So we're not sure exactly if the grandfather is paternal or maternal, meaning is this grandfather from his mother's side or his father's side, or father's side and mother's side. But I think it can be assumed he's probably paternal, but again, not 100% sure, so for this I've just put a question mark. Now, he could also be a member of the Grimes family, so it's potential that this leads to the Grimes family, or that the Grimes family was always a part of the Grimes family. But anyway, we start off with our Grimes family. So we have, of course, Mr. Grimes, which is Rick Grimes' father. Now, we don't know if he is dead or alive, so there is every chance that he is out there. Obviously, Rick probably does have a mother, but well, he'll have a mother, but we don't know, there's no mention of her, so I've decided for characters that aren't mentioned, I've just not included, but there would obviously be a mother here who, of course, they both had Rick Grimes. Now, we don't actually know his status as of the TV show, but of course they are doing the Rick Grimes movie, so it can be assumed that he is alive, and we're going to see him in the movies, but, in the timeline that we have now in the show, there's a slight chance that he could be dead, so I've just left him as status unknown for now. Now, Rick Grimes potentially has a sister called Evie. Now, Carl mentions a Aunt Evie, but we don't know whether this Evie is Rick's sister or Laurie's sister. So I've put her just in between the two, and again, we do not know if she is alive or dead, so that's where Evie is. So carrying on with Rick's first wife was, of course, a woman named Laurie Grimes, who most people probably know. And together, they had a son called Carl Grimes. Now, Carl Grimes is, of course, deceased as of season 10, as well as Laurie Grimes, who is also deceased. Now, if we go up to Laurie Grimes, we see her parents here, and again, that's where the connection to Evie is. Now, there's a web episode called Cold Storage, where there's this man called Chase. Now, he has a sister, he mentions he has a sister in Atlanta, and I believe Laurie mentions she has a brother. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of fans kind of sort of theorize that this is actually Laurie's brother, but I think there was something to do with the locations that they mention. It is disputed, but there is every chance that this guy is Laurie's brother. He does see a picture of Rick and kind of smiles, so I personally conclude that this is not Laurie's brother, and the connection to the main show was just simply that storage locker was Rick Grimes' storage locker, but there is a slight chance that this guy Chase is actually Laurie's brother, so I just put him in here anyway. I threw him in here because I know there are a few fans who do say that this is Laurie's brother. So we also do not know his status. He does survive his web episode, but obviously he never appears in either 3 of the shows. Now, Laurie revealed that she is pregnant in season 2 to Rick, And in season 3, she gives birth to her child named Judith. Now, for a long time, people were unsure whether Judith was the daughter of Rick or the daughter of Shane Walsh, who is, of course, Rick's best friend and who looked after Laurie after the apocalypse started and Rick was still in the hospital. And also presumed dead, may I add. So, we didn't know at first, but in season 7, Rick kind of hinted that it most likely isn't his child. And then later on the show, someone from the show actually did confirm that Judith is in fact Shane's daughter, not Rick's. So Laurie and Shane, through a bastard line, if you want to include it like that. I haven't done this for the rest, so I don't know why I've done this for this one. But Laurie and Shane, of course, had Judith together. So Judith Grimes is here. Now, Judith is still alive, so yeah. Of course, Shane is deceased. Now, Shane's line, if we go up Shane's line, we of course have Mr. and Mrs. Walsh. He does mention both of his parents in the show, and he also mentions Jean, who is a grandmother. Now, Jean is heavily hinted to be a paternal grandmother, but for the sake of clarity, we don't know 100%, so I've just put her as either Mr. or Mrs. Walsh. So I think she's paternal, though. So moving forward, we shall go back to Rick. So Rick, of course, had Carl, had Judith, and Carl actually died and outlived Rick. And a short time before that, Rick started a relationship with a woman named Michonne Hawthorne. Now, Michonne, of course, is one of the main characters, but Michonne and Rick's relationship is never strictly said to be a marriage. So they never had a wedding, as it was revealed, but for all intents and purposes, Michonne is considered Rick's wife. So for the sake of making this easier on me, I have just considered them a married couple. Now, of course, Rick went missing. Michonne presumed he was dead, and then she found out she was pregnant. So there is another child, which is Rick Grimes Jr., also known as RJ. So we obviously have Carl, Judith, who Rick essentially adopted as his own, and RJ. So three kids for Rick, one of which, of course, is deceased, but two of which are alive. So going to Michonne's line, I thought we would have a look at hers. Now again, her status is unknown. She will be in the movies, but we haven't seen it yet. So going up, we of course have Mrs. Hawthorne. She does mention her mother. She doesn't mention her father, but I imagine there is a Mr. Hawthorne too. Now, of course, Michonne had a relationship with a guy called Mike. They weren't married, but they did have a relationship. Now, of course, Mike is deceased. You may not recognize him from this photo. This was in a short flashback that was in an episode in season 4. But Mike is one of the zombie pets that Michonne has in her first introduction. Now, Michonne and Mike had also had a child together who was called Andre Anthony. So I'm not sure where this surname comes from. I'm pretty sure this is also Mike's surname, but on the wiki I couldn't exactly figure it out. So I've just called him Andre Anthony, but it's possible this guy is Mike Anthony. Now, Andre Anthony unfortunately died as a result from the neglect of Mike and his friend Terry. So Andre is dead. So Michonne lost this child, but she has RJ. Now, that pretty much concludes the Grimes line, if you will. This concludes everything we can directly connect to Rick Grimes. But there is something interesting, because Judith Grimes mentions that she considers some of the other characters as her adopted uncles and aunts. So through Judith, I say that we can look at the adoptive uncles and aunts line. So these are people that Judith has stated are her uncles and aunts. And through this line, we can look at some of the rest of the characters. So starting off, she lists Rosita as an aunt. So of course, Rosita has had many lovers mentioned and seen in the shows. I didn't want to look at girlfriends and boyfriends unless, or lovers for that matter, unless they share they share a child together, adopted or otherwise. So I haven't included Abraham or Spencer or any of the others, but I have included Sadiq because, of course, he is deceased, and they share a child together. I don't know why I mentioned deceased. So, of course, she and Sadiq, who is unfortunately deceased, they had a child called Socorro Espinosa. Now, Socorro is also known as Coco, and she is currently alive, so, yeah. So, of course, Rosita Espinosa, she does mention that she has a brother, who I've put here, implying that they probably have, obviously, his parents too. Sadiq, of course, mentions his mother. His mother taught him to kill the dead and release their souls, so she was obviously a very important figure in Sadiq's life. And also is the direct result as to why Carl died, because Carl was bitten trying to help Sadiq honour his mother. And Sadiq also mentions he has an aunt and a father, so I included those guys on too. Now, I did include Gabriel. I know I said no boyfriends. I've just already broken the rule, but I love Gabriel, so I wanted to put him on here. So sue me. But also, it's kind of useful to put him on here because Gabriel later adopts Coco as his daughter. So, although Gabriel is a boyfriend, he technically is currently fathering Coco as his own, despite not being his own. So that concludes the first adoptive line, which is I'm just going to call it the Espinosa's line, but there is more. So we have the Dixon line. So Judith also mentions Daryl Dixon as one of her uncles. So through Daryl, we don't have too much, but if we go up, we know that his father was a man called Will Dixon. Now, if you play the Survival Instinct game, I know it's not a very popular one, we actually play as Will Dixon in the opening of the game, where we see that he is killed. So, Will Dixon, we do know, is dead. Now, we don't get to see him because it's all in first person, so I can't put a picture on here. Mrs. Dixon is, of course, his mother. I believe she died in a fire. She burned up in a fire, so I've put her on here too. So we know she's dead. Now, of course, Will and Mrs. Dixon didn't only have Daryl, they also had a man named Merle. And Merle is, of course, deceased. He died in Season 3. Now, Daryl kind of adopted Dog, so I decided to include this on. So, Daryl with Leah. Now, Leah was the original owner of Dog, but Daryl kind of adopted Dog as his own. So I thought I'd just put this on as a bit of a meme, bit of a joke. But Leah is, of course, we don't know her status, and she also adopted a child named Matthew. So I've put him on here too. So that concludes the Dixon line. So we have the Espinosa line and the Dixon line. So we then have another line, which I'm going to call the Ree line. So the Ree line is, of course, connected to Maggie Ree. Now, Maggie actually has quite a large family, but where she gets the name Ree is, of course, from her husband, Glenn. So originally her name was Greene. So before we go through Maggie's actual Greene family, we're just going to quickly talk about Glenn. So, of course, Glenn is deceased. He died before the birth of his son. So Maggie and Glenn had a son named Herschel Ree. Herschel is named after Maggie's father. Now, Glenn does mention his parents who lived in Michigan. Because this tree was getting quite bulky and messy, I decided not to include them, but he does mention his parents were originally from Korea, but sort of moved to Michigan. So, just want to quickly mention them. So yeah, we have Glenn Ree. Now, Maggie's father is, of course, a man named Herschel. So Herschel Greene, and he died in Season 4. And Maggie's mother is a woman named Josephine Greene, who never actually appeared in the show. Now, she died many years before the zombie apocalypse started. So she wouldn't have been a zombie. She was probably just buried in the ground. Now, Herschel remarried after Maggie's mother died. So Herschel married a woman named Annette Greene. Now, we do see Annette Greene in the Walker barn, and she's kind of stunned by a shotgun blast and actually attacks Beth, and Beth is then saved by Andrea. But, so, Annette Greene is dead. Now, Annette already married before meeting Herschel, and she had a son with her previous husband, a guy called Sean. Now, Sean is another zombie that was in the barn, so Herschel adopted Sean as his own, and that's why Sean takes the name Greene. So, Herschel had 3 children, effectively. But Annette and Herschel had a child together, which of course is Beth Greene, who died in season 5. So that's how we get the sort of Greene line. And there's also, so there's one more connection. Herschel also had in the barn, he also had a nephew in there. So we have an unnamed sibling somewhere, but probably a male sibling, considering Arnold Greene is a Greene and not something else. So we have Arnold Greene, who was obviously one of the zombies here. You can see him, and he is also deceased. So there's an unnamed sibling there somewhere. So that concludes the reline, as I call it. So we have the Dixon, the Espinosa, and the reline. Now, that actually concludes the people Judith listed as her uncles and aunts. She does mention Carol and the King. Well, she mentions Carol and the King, but she doesn't refer to Carol and the King as uncle and aunt. So I was a little like, do I include Carol? But then, considering I've included all of the main characters apart from Carol, I felt like it wasn't fair. So I included Carol too. So this is the Peltier line. So we of course have Carol Peltier. Now, Carol Peltier has had 2 husbands in the show, one of which is of course Ezekiel, and this is the king that Judith was referring to, King Ezekiel. And she also had a husband named Ed Peltier, and you'll remember Ed from season 1, where he, of course, died. Now, together, Carol and Ed had a child named Sophia Peltier, who have also unfortunately died. And that was the first child that Carol lost. Now, Carol in season 4 adopted 2 girls, Mika and Lizzie, who they both died in season 4. Now, Lizzie killed Mika, and then Carol was forced to kill Lizzie because at the time Carol was looking after Judith Grimes, who is here. Carol was looking after Judith and was worried that Lizzie would kill Judith when she was a baby. So, as a result of that, Carol was forced to put down her adopted daughter Lizzie. Now, Lizzie and Mika, of course, were originally the daughters of Ryan Samuels, who is their biological father, but he, of course, died at the start of season 4, forcing Carol to adopt both the girls. There is also a mother mentioned, but I decided again, it was getting messy, so I didn't include her. So that concludes Carol's first 3 children, but then she decided when she married Ezekiel to adopt another child, which of course is Henry. Of course, Henry died in season 9. Now, Henry originally was he had a father and a mother who both died, and was being looked after and sort of adopted by his brother Benjamin. So after Benjamin died, Henry was kind of left fatherless, if you will, or he didn't have a father figure. So that's why Carol and Ezekiel stepped in to adopt him. So that pretty much concludes the entire family tree. I just want to quickly mention, I was going to include something else, but I decided against it. So initially I was going to include a character called Jeffrey Grimes, who is in the comics. Now, this character, I initially thought they mentioned it in the show, but then I found out that they haven't mentioned it yet in the show. But in the comics, there is a character called Jeffrey Grimes who is mentioned in the show. And then this is comic spoilers here, so if you click off if you do not want the comics to be spoiled for you. but there is a special comic called The Walking Dead Alien, where it is revealed that Jeffrey Grimes, Rick Grimes' brother, died pretty much off the coast of Spain quite early in the apocalypse. So I decided against including him, but that's where this line was going to lead to if you were interested. But apart from that, that concludes the tree. So I hope you enjoyed. I really enjoy making these things. I don't know why. I like going through the different families of various TV shows, so any suggestions, please do tell me. I may do one for the comic book series, so if you're interested in seeing a Walking Dead family tree from the comic book series, please do let me know. It will probably be something similar, and I probably will look at some of the other big name characters as well. So I'll most likely look at comic Maggie, and I'll look at comic, obviously, well, I'm trying to think. Comic Andrea, maybe? Well, obviously I would have to do that for Rick, so I don't know. But any suggestions, please just do let me know in the comment section, and I'll be sure to, if you're interested in seeing that comic book series one, we'll do that. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.